We hit you with a big, heavy dose of the truth. That plus more on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for Wednesday, September 11th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. I shout him out. I appreciate him. He's on Twitter. You can hit him up as well, at Ari Produces. You can hit me up at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And as you can imagine, a lot of calls and a lot of texts based off of what we saw on Sunday. Raiders 22-10 loss to the LA Chargers. So I'll try to get as many calls in and texts as possible on the show, and we'll do that coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2. Had a really good conversation with Lincoln Kennedy, the great Lincoln Kennedy, who does color commentary for the Raiders. He's side-by-side in the booth with Jason Horowitz on the call. He was there at SoFi Stadium on Sunday, and he always has a really good perspective. He always, obviously, is able to break it down really like no others, and that's why I always enjoy having him on my radio show each and every Tuesday and Thursday at 3:30 Pacific time. And on Tuesday, he joined my show, and, man, he was fantastic. So I wanted to bring a couple sound bites to the show, and then I thought, you know what, I can't pick which one in particular or which couple in particular I want to bring to the table. So I'm going to just let you hear the whole thing. Lincoln Kennedy was fantastic, explained what he saw on Sunday, and more importantly, why he saw what he saw. I think the why is very important, and a lot of times we don't understand the why, but Lincoln Kennedy, who's obviously been there in the trenches, been there, done that, he absolutely understands the why, and he'll break it down. You'll hear that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, as I always do, news and notes of the day, a little roster news, little depth chart news, hearing from Devontae Adams, and more. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I'll tell you more about them later on the show. But before I officially get started on today's show, I definitely don't want to ignore what today is. It's September 11th, and back in 2001, the country got attacked. And it was a horrific day in this country. It was a day that if we were alive and we were paying attention and we were seeing what was going on, if we were old enough to understand what was going on, we'll never forget. And we should never forget. And it was a day that really changed this country. A lot of people lost their lives. A lot of loved ones, went to be first responders and do yeoman's work to make sure that people were safe as they could be and people that were in need were taken care of. And you just can't ignore that. And I will never ignore that. And I can do a segment, 2 segments, 3 segments based off of just today's date, 9/11, and where I was exactly when it happened. Remember how it changed the world, how it changed the sports world. I still have in my mind, no joke, Raider Nation, I still have in my mind the image when football got back to playing and seeing John Gruden standing there in the Coliseum with the American flag in his hand, pumping his fist, and tears rolling down his eyes because of all the events that had taken place and everything and how this country had been affected. So definitely want to shout out to all the first responders, not only then, but now, the ones that do everything that they can to take care of us. Obviously, always like to show love to our armed forces, our military, the police that take good care of our communities. Want to make sure to be able to shout out everyone that allows knuckleheads like myself to go ahead and do shows like this on the regular where we can entertain, talk a little football, and get away from everything that may not be too pleasant. But definitely do not want to forget. We'll never forget. At least I won't. Not here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, this date, which is September 11th. So with that being said, definitely want to take a couple seconds just to reminisce on what happened on that day. Again, never forget September 11th. Now, with that being said, want to go ahead and jump into some news and notes here in segment number 1. I want to talk about the Raiders roster moves that they made on Tuesday, and we talked about it on Tuesday's show. Expected GM Tom Telesco to go out and make some moves to address the depth, the fact that it's been hit pretty hard on the Raiders defensive line. AP told us on Monday when we met with them that, Tom Telesco was addressing that, and on Tuesday, later on that afternoon, we did find out about it. The Raiders signed free agent defensive end K'Lavon Chaisson. He was a guy that was was drafted in the first round by the Jaguars back in 2020. He was number 20 overall pick. Played 4 seasons with the team, had 57 career games, 11 starts, had 72 total tackles, 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and 2 passes defense. And I'll start right there, or stop right there. A lot of people looked at that and said, well, what kind of move is that? That's not a big impact player. And look, the Raiders didn't say they were going to go out and make some big splash signing. They said they were going to add some depth, and that's what they have. Charles Snowden, who got activated from the practice squad to the 53-man roster, he's going to do a lot of heavy lifting, right? Janarius Robinson, he's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Those are the guys that are going to slide in for Malcolm Kuntz and Tyree Wilson. But now all of a sudden you need to start adding some depth behind them. So a guy like K'Lavon Chaisson, a former first-round pick, could provide that. Is he the end-all, be-all? No, but he is someone that's been there, done that. It's got a little bit of veteranism to him and could, just slide in there, get ramped up on the practice squad, and if they need him, they could activate him to the 53-man roster. And they also made another addition. They signed the cornerback, Caillou Blue Kelly. They signed him to the practice squad as well. He was originally a 5th-round pick. Number 157 overall by the Ravens back in 2023. Since he's been in the league, he's also been with Seattle, Green Bay, and Washington. He's played in 8 games, had 5 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. He's a native of Vegas. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that until the release came out. Blue Kelly started 4 seasons at Stanford and totaled 148 tackles, 26 passes defense, 3 picks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Was named second team All Pac-12 as a senior. And also doing a little bit of research, realized that his father played in the National Football League as well. So they added cornerback Caillou Blue Kelly to the practice squad alongside defensive end K'Lavon Chaisson. So if they need them, those are guys that could be activated at any time. Also wanted to hit you with the updated depth chart that the Raiders released for week 2, and I'll go through it really quickly. Of course, there's been a little bit of change due to injury, but we'll go over it really quickly. Starting wide receivers, as you know, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Behind Adams, you have Ramel Keaton, who actually was a guy that was inactive on Sunday versus the Chargers, and then Tyreek McAllister is behind him, but he's really a special teams guy. Behind Jacoby Myers, you have Trey Tucker and DJ Turner. Both guys saw action on Sunday. Offensive line, left to right, Colton Miller with Andrews Pete behind him. Cody White here at the left guard spot with Jackson Powers Johnson, JPJ, the rookie, behind him. Andre James at the center spot. Right guard is Dylan Parham with Jordan Meredith behind him. Thayer Munford holding down the right tackle spot with DJ Glaze behind him. Tight ends lined up in 12 personnel. Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers. Harrison Bryant is behind Michael Mayer. On the quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. Running back still Zamir White, Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, and Dylan Lobby. And remember, rookie Dylan Lobby was inactive on Sunday as well. Looking at the defense real quick, starting defensive ends, Max Crosby and Janarius Robinson. Crosby has Tyree Wilson behind him. I would expect Tyree Wilson to be inactive this Sunday. We'll get a better update coming up. Matter of fact, today we'll meet with Antonio Pierce, so we'll ask him about an update on Tyree Wilson, how he's doing, if he has a chance to get out there. But I would actually be shocked if Tyree plays at all coming up on Sunday. But currently right now, Tyree Wilson is listed behind Max Crosby. Behind Janarius Robinson, you have Charles Snowden. So I'm sure you're going to see a lot of Crosby, Robinson, and Snowden on the field on Sunday. Starting defensive tackles, John Jenkins and Christian Wilkins. Behind Jenkins, you have Nesta Jade Silvera. Behind Wilkins, you have Adam Butler and Jonah Lalu. And then, of course, the outside linebackers, Divine Diablo with Masterson behind him. That's a 2 deep. Robert Spillane at the middle linebacker. Tommy Eichenberg, who was inactive on Sunday, with Amari Burney behind him. That's 3 deep. Cornerbacks, Nate Hobbs, Jacorian Bennett with DeCam Richardson. He was also inactive on Sunday, lined up behind JB. Jack Jones with Darnay Holmes lined up behind him. Free safety, Trayvon Merrick with Isaiah Palomao behind him. Marcus Epps as a strong safety with Chris Smith and Thomas Harper as a 3 deep there at the strong safety position. You know, A.J. Cole, Daniel Carlson, the punter and the kicker. A.J. Cole, the holder. Jacob Bobenmeyer, the long snapper. Kick returner, Amir Abdullah. Tyreek McAllister. And the punt returner, Trey Tucker and Tyreek McAllister. So we'll see how that plays out. You saw a lot of Amir Abdullah and Trey Tucker in the return game on Sunday. We'll see if we get to see some Tyreek McAllister out there in Baltimore. Also, I wanted to pass this nugget along to you, and it's really just a soundbite from Devontae Adams, who was a guest on the Up and Adams show, Kay Adams, on Tuesday, and found out, matter of fact, she made the announcement, and he agreed to it live on the show, that he's going to be on this show every single Tuesday, I believe at 11 a.m. Pacific time. You can check out Devontae Adams on the Up and Adams show. So a lot of people hit up the text line and say, hey, how's Devontae? What kind of mood is he in? We don't get to talk to him until Wednesdays at the facility. So you want to get a little early insight to how Devontae Adams is feeling? Tune into the Up and Adams show with Kay Adams each and every Tuesday where he'll be a guest. But one of the questions that she asked, and it was probably a good 15, 16-minute conversation that they had, one of the questions she asked was about how he's getting to know his quarterback, Gardner Minshew. Here's her question and Devontae's follow-up.
Where are you in that process of getting to know your quarterback?
I don't know exactly where we are, but I know it's really fun working with this guy. And he's the type of dude, one, he's a hell of a guy. And on top of that, he's always, his ears are always open, trying to find out ways. You know, Aaron and I did it that made it work. What are some things we did the last 2 years here that worked? And he's always trying to, you know, bring different ideas to me. He wants me to talk to him, and you know that just breeds a really healthy relationship between a quarterback and receiver.
I mean, one of those completions with him, it was early. He hit you with anticipation. I was impressed with that. Yeah. I mean, that's the type of thing. I think he's a big, you know, go with his gut and can kind of, you know, that play right there that they're showing on the screen. I mean, that was just literally perfect timing. He's holding safety with his eyes, and he knew where to go. So when we're playing confident like that and communicating out there and adjusting on the fly, obviously we know they play a lot of weird coverages to me, so it makes the game a little bit harder. But, you know, when you have that type of mindset he does of getting better and going out there and, you know, making it happen regardless, you know, it gives us a chance. In the middle of the field, in the window, I loved that play. Yeah. Are you hard on him? I'm hard on everybody. I mean, that's as a leader of this team, that's how it is. I don't really have to be too, you know, like crazy, like, you know, about how hard I'm being on really anybody on this team, because these guys are all grown men. They understand how to work. They're all, you know, there's no egos. Everybody's just shows up at the door, checks the ego, and we come ready to work and work together to figure it out. So makes it easy for me. So Devontae sounds like, you know, he's in a good place, getting to know Gardner Minshew. Sound like he's a guy that he respects and likes his work ethic and likes the way that he wants to do some things and, you know, get on the same page with Devontae. So, you know, again, we can only go off of what we see and what we hear, and that's the latest that we heard. We will hear from Devontae later on today at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. He'll talk after practice, him and Gardner Minshew. So, again, you want to check out Devontae Adams. He's on the Up and Adams show each and every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. I do believe that's the time, so check out that. It might be a little bit earlier. I'll have to double check. I'll double check the time, and then I'll get back to you, because I do think it's earlier than that. I think it was 11 a.m. Eastern. So maybe it's 8 a.m. I don't know. Now I'm lying to you. I don't want to lie to you. My final nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Then we'll get to Lincoln Kennedy and all of his great truths that he was spitting to me on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920. How about this? This is kind of when you know that the Raiders are just weren't meant to be on Sunday. This is a nugget about the kicking that was going on all week 1 in the NFL. 6 kickers scored 15-plus fantasy points. Only one tight end did that. Everyone knows I'm not a fantasy football guy, but think about that. There were 6 kickers in the league that scored 15-plus fantasy points. And I believe on Monday Night Football, I believe the 49ers kicker had 20 points. But that's beside the point. 6 kickers scored 15-plus fantasy points. 21 field goals of 50-plus yards, which is the most all-time in a single week. How about this? 68 of 74 on field goal attempts, second most field goals in a single week. And, of course, for our purposes, here with the Locked On Raiders podcast and all of Raider Nation, one of the few misses that came in week 1 was Daniel Carlson, right? Cash Money Carlson never misses. And, of course, he misses. When they have a record-breaking week for kickers and the Raiders have one of the best kickers in the league, that kicker happens to miss, go 1 for 2 on the day as opposed to going 2 for 2. Now, would that have made the Raiders win the game? No. But still, of course, it's like one of those, of course. Of course, every kicker across the league did great, and the one that always does great didn't have a great day. And again, I say that miss that Daniel Carlson had was really a lot to do with the bad snap. But, man, when you look at those numbers and you hear that nugget about the kicking and realize that Daniel Carlson wasn't part of that kicking party, it's like, dang, right? Of course, a missed opportunity. But that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Went a little bit longer than was supposed to, but I had a lot that I wanted to get to in that segment. Coming up in segment number 2, you'll hear from the great Lincoln Kennedy as he joined my radio show on Tuesday and really put a bow on week 1 and gave you a lot of explanations to why you saw what you saw. That's coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast.
Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And I know you've heard me talk about FanDuel a lot. It's America's #1 sportsbook. They have something a little different for you now. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So no matter where you are in the country, no matter, what the home team is that may be around you, you could always tune in and watch the Silver and Black play if you go ahead and get to FanDuel.com and, make a $5 bet, right? $5 bet gets you a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Just go to FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into this conversation I had on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness, my daily show, my local radio show that I do. Lincoln Kennedy joins me each and Tuesday and every Thursday. Tuesdays, he reviews the game that just happened. Thursday, he previews the upcoming game. But Tuesday, he was on fire. Tuesday, man, he was ready to go, and, he had a lot to say about what he saw from the booth, from the bird's eye view on Sunday versus Chargers, and I thought it was fantastic to the point where I couldn't just isolate one sound or two sounds. I had to let you hear the whole thing. So here we go. Let's just jump right into it. Here's my conversation from Tuesday with the great Lincoln Kennedy. Let's start with the offense, man. From the offensive side of things, we know it starts up front with the offensive line. That's your specialty. What did you see, or I guess more importantly, what didn't you see from the offensive line on Sunday?
First of all, it's good to be with you, Q. Here's the thing. I will say this, and I've heard a lot of banter from the Raider Nation collectively after the first game. Critical of everything from the offensive line play, quarterback play, everything, just in general team play. Look, coming into the season, Q, you and I talked extensively through the preseason and stuff like that and other hits. I kind of foresaw this sort of happening. Not a lot of cohesiveness, not a lot of overall togetherness play from the offensive line, and I think that was going to add to the struggles. More importantly, coming into the season, I think you and I both agreed that this was going to be a defensive-led team. Mm-hmm. So offense was going to have to try to get in there where they could. With that being said, very disappointed in the outcome of, obviously, a Sunday against the Chargers, because I thought the Chargers were as equally inept or, even behind the Raiders in so many plays as offense, but they made enough plays to win, if that makes sense. And so what we're looking at right now is this is going to be a defensive-led team. There's no denying about it. But until this offensive line, which is the first time the starting offensive line played together collectively,
yeah,
that's something that needs to be said and needs to be mentioned because I think it's important. It's not every successful offense that I've ever played on, and I'm not just talking about middle of the rung, getting things done. Successful offenses that I played on has had an offensive line that has played together for some time.
Yeah.
Has had a quarterback that has played with that offensive line for some time. Has had an offensive coordinator that has coached that quarterback, called those plays for that offense for some time. This is all brand new. And I say that to say that it's not that you throw up the red flag and, all right, we surrender. But I will be honest with the Raider Nation. It's going to be a long season, because you're going to take your lumps like you took on Sunday against an inferior team like the Chargers. Now, my hope is, if after we have this conversation after week 7, 8, or 9, that it's better playing a mediocre team and finding a way to win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And, unfortunately, of course, that's not what Raider Nation wants to hear.
No.
But reality, right? Reality
Certainly.
of what it is. And I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, JPJ at some point is going to be inserted into the starting lineup on that offensive line. That's going to also set them back a little bit because now they're getting used to him and he's getting used to them.
Well, here's the thing. Once JPJ is inserted, or if he's inserted, how much can we rely and depend on him?
Right.
The thing is when you draft a guy coming out of college that has had his injury issues, you're taking a big risk. You can certainly grandeur and talk about the upside, the potential of what that guy can be on the other side. But at the same point, you have to deal with his history.
Yeah.
And look, most of the scientists that I know that I'm good friends with, mathematicians, talk about history, repetitive history, and they talk about how this can come into view. there are always those people who are optimistic that certainly look for the bright side. Oh, my gosh, she's got such a great upside. Let's do it. But this is why I've often said when it comes to draft parties and the draft show, it's a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get with those guys coming out of college, because I've seen many of guys that look like Tarzan play like Jane. I'm not saying that's where JPP is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
JPJ is where. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you're taking a big chance when you know a guy has had a history with injury issues in college, taking a chance whether or not he can be available for you on the next level, which is what being a pro is about.
Absolutely. Availability, your best ability. Nobody likes to hear it, but it's the god-awful truth when it comes to the National Football League and being a pro. Like you mentioned, again, Lincoln Kennedy with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Unnecessary roughness. Well, we know Colton Miller is a pro's pro, and he struggled on Sunday. Was that more of just because he missed a lot of training camp, in your opinion?
Without a doubt. It's his first game back off shoulder surgery. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, and I don't want to shake a stick at it, but it is what it is. You're going up against perennial All-Pros in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Mm-hmm. It's not like the other guys on the other side of the ball don't get paid.
Right. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are professionals, too. So it's not easy. The fact that you're going in on the road, hostile environment, that you haven't had collectively as a team, organization, has not had, overwhelming success since SoFi is open. You take that in consideration. That has to play a part in the back of your mind. And on top of that, you put your best foot forward against two perennial All-Pros. It's not easy. It's not an easy deal. And this is one thing that I want to emphasize to all the audience and the Raider Nation out there. What always, chapped my hide as a former offensive lineman is that a defensive end, a defensive tackle, goes out, and on average, most professional games, on average, you're playing anywhere from 70 to 75, if not more, if not less, average offensive plays. Mm-hmm. If a defensive end, Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa or someone like that, gets 2 sacks, they're player of the game.
Right.
What happened to the other 78 plays? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I love that you put it that way because Max Crosby gets 2 sacks, he went all-pro on the game, right?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. So it always chapped my hide that things are looked at like that.
Yeah.
Collectively, when you go numbers-wise, and then just turn to the page a little bit, Gardner Minshew's numbers-wise, from outside looking in, weren't bad. Mm-hmm. But they weren't necessarily productive. And so if you're the Raider Nation, you're longing for that, I want to put over the top. How can we get over the top? It's going to take it's a process, what we're looking at right now. The fact that your offensive line is just finally starting to come together. The fact that, Luke Getsy as an offensive coordinator is finally coming into regular season plays where he doesn't have to be vanilla, where he doesn't have to be generic, because he has to want to try to coach his style. You got to see what your guys can do at full speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not anything that you can duplicate in practice.
No, and that's absolutely true. And being in training camp, I saw that firsthand, right? You cannot duplicate that in practice. You're spot on about that. And, we've had some folks call in and say, Q, they need to use the play action. They need to stretch the field. But, Lincoln, there was no run game, really. I mean, there was no run game, and you have to have that run game to be able to even utilize play action, or it goes for nothing, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, the actual term play action comes off the stem of being able to run the football. Mm-hmm. If you can't run the football, who the hell is going to give a damn about your play action?
Right. Yeah.
and here's I'll take it a step further, because if the Raider Nation has a chance to go back and look at the film, look at the game, the TV copy, if you can see the all 22. In the second half, after the Chargers realized the Raiders were having success with Devontae Adams on his deep dig route, which is essentially a deep in route, they created a robber. They put their best defender, their free safety, in what they call a robber instance, where he took that play away. So now if Gardner Minshew does 2 things. If he throws the ball, it's either intercepted or he gets his star receiver's head taken off, which he doesn't want.
No.
So you have to pull down from that. So when another team makes adjustment, and my point is, when the other team makes adjustments, where do you go from there? This team is not experienced enough, together enough, to know where to go. And you don't have enough plays. The fact that the Raiders only had 12 first downs,
right,
is unusually low for me.
Yeah.
To analyze and to predict and to put in perspective. If you can't get a first down on a 3rd and 1 and on a 4th and 1, you're not going to have success in the National Football League.
No, you won't. And the Raiders didn't have very much success on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. And then late in the game, Lincoln chose not to go for it on 4th and 1. As you're on the call, what were your thoughts when you saw that?
A little surprise, because the earlier aggression, I thought AP would go for it. But you know what? Here's the thing, and I'll give a pass again because there are a lot of things that are new. Antonio Pierce is a first-time head coach in the National Football League. To me, I always enjoyed watching how a new coach manages the game. Because I don't want you calling defenses. I don't want you calling offenses. I don't want you yelling at people. I want you to manage the game, the emotion of the game. I was beside myself. I thought he would go for it.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm not an analytical guy. I don't read into numbers like that. I know I talked about mathematicians earlier. I just don't do that. I go off of feel and emotion. I would have thought he would have went for it. I understand why he didn't. But again, this is also a learning experience for him.
Right.
Learning how to manage the clock, learning how to manage the game. All of this is a learning experience. Going forward, I hope he learns from it. But no one ever gets it right, because you know this, and you've covered enough sports, Q, to know as a head coach in the National Football League, you look like a genius when it works. You look like a dumbass when it doesn't.
Right. Absolutely. You're down if you do, you're down if you don't. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. That is absolutely the truth. Again, Lincoln Kennedy is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. What did you think about the sequence that happened right before halftime? Gardner Minshew fumbles that ball. I don't know if that was a smoke route he was trying to throw or if he was just trying to pull it back and it didn't work. And then obviously they don't get that chance to score before halftime, and then they have a 3-and-out to start the second half. I felt like that was a huge momentum shift right there where the Raiders really could have capitalized and they didn't get that opportunity.
It was disappointing, but it goes back to chemistry. Mm-hmm. Having that overall familiarity with your receivers, they know you as well as you know them. The thing is that when you see quarterbacks, when you see quarterbacks hitch passes and tap passes, they're not ready to throw the ball. More importantly, the receiver's not ready to catch the ball. Mm-hmm. And that is a miscommunication that only comes with time. Look, I've seen enough football to know that no two receivers will run a down and out right the same way.
Right.
And so no quarterback can rely on the fact that the coaching is you run 10 yards down the field and you run straight to the sideline. It's different for everyone. Some guy cut it short, some guys run it long, whomever. You need that chemistry. So when I think about some of those miscues, like that pass with Gardner Minshew was trying, it's like, oh, I thought you were going to be open. Oh, I thought you were going to turn around. You didn't turn around. Oh, I tried to pull it down. It's unfortunate that it happened, but it's a learning. It's a learning issue. It's something that has to happen, that has to come with time, that won't come overnight, and you can't do it in practice. Unfortunately, when you have guys that don't play in preseason together, and unfortunately when you have guys who just only practice or only became available to practice, these are lessons that you can only learn over time.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that full speed momentum until you actually get into a game and see how it happens full speed.
Right. Yeah, no, it's reps. It's all about reps.
Absolutely.
Reps at full speed, right? It's that simple.
Football's a very easy game. It's very simple. It doesn't take a lot of analytics. It doesn't take a lot of math. You can go and you can do what you want off of history and stuff like that. But going into this past weekend's game, Q, I knew that Jim Harbaugh wanted to run the football. Mm-hmm. I knew that he did not want to put his quarterback in harm's way. I knew the defense was a strength of the Raiders. However, the offense needs to do their part. If you don't put points on the board to put the pressure on the opposing offense, their playbook is completely open. And what did we see in the second half? We saw the defense start to get worn down.
Yeah. Yep.
You saw a lot of arm tackles. You saw a lot of missed tackles. You saw a lot of misjudgments as far as angles. That's what happens when offense doesn't do its part. Defense gets fatigued because even the best defense can only be so good for so long.
Now, after hearing that, you could tell why I couldn't just isolate one soundbite or one answer, right? I mean, there was just really too much good stuff, and I wouldn't have done it justice if I had just taken one soundbite or the other. So I know it was a little bit longer than it was supposed to be. That happens here quite a bit on the Locked On Raiders podcast. My bad. But I thought that was really good, and I thought that you would really enjoy hearing that. And that really kind of officially can put the bow on the week 1 action and really start to focus our attention on week 2 and the Baltimore Ravens. And, the one thing that really caught my attention is how long Lincoln said that it might take for the Raiders to really get in the same page. And he's talking it could end up being week 7, week 8, That's a very long time. You hope that it happens a little bit quicker. But again, this is coming from a guy that's in the trenches, not a guy that's pulling something out his backside, throwing it against the wall and hopes it sticks. It's a guy that's been there, done that. So, that's why he, didn't want to break the news to the Raider Nation like that. But I think it's also healthy to tell the truth, not sugarcoat stuff, not try to make everything look like rainbows and puppy dogs, but instead tell the truth. And that's what you'll always get from the great Lincoln Kennedy. So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed being a part of that conversation. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor here on the show, which is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Everything from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Heavy D in Western New York, calling to talk about some of the issues that happened to the Raiders offense. And really the theme of his call was about chunk plays. Here he is, Heavy D in Western New York.
Q, this is your man Heavy D calling from Western New York. Rest of my family's happy. They were at the Bills Stadium enjoying a win. I'm still licking my wounds here today like the rest of the Raider Nation. I just want to jump off on a couple things I just heard you say on your broadcast. The punt, inexcusable. AP robbed us of a chance to win. I'm not even going to dwell on that. But I want to talk about your 2nd and 1 situation that you referred to on the first drive. 2nd and 1, why not take a shot? This offense is not good. We know it's not good, but we do have some playmakers. This team absolutely needs to start taking some shots down the field, and 2nd and short would be the ideal time to do it. We're not going to be able to have long, sustained drives regularly. We have Trey Tucker running 4.340s. We still got Devontae. We got Brock Bowers. Get him in some type of a mismatch and go deep to him. But we need to get some chunks of yards. If this team can't get some chunks of yards, we are in big trouble. And AP and Getsy just have to get more aggressive. That the drive where we missed the field goal, we were at about the 35, 36-yard line. We ran twice for 3 yards and then threw an incomplete pass that wasn't going to be a first down anyways. And it was just this gingerly little calls that they were making. It was like they were just going to be happy if we could get a few more yards and get a little bit shorter field goal. Hey, if we get a first down, great, but let's make sure we get this field goal. And they were just weak calls. They weren't going for the jugular. That would have been another great shot. We just got a first down on the 35-yard line. Take a shot to the house. If we don't start getting more aggressive and start trying to get some chunks of yards, it is going to be a long year. We are not going to be able to march down the field methodically and just get first down after first down. We're going to need some chunks of yards. I can live with some deep incomplete passes. And you know what else happens on those deep passes a lot? You get a pass interference. 1 out of every 6 of them. And you're marching down the field anyways. But this team needs to take 5 shots down the field each and every game. Once a quarter at least. Bomb one down the field or at least try to get a chunk of yards. I don't know, Raider Nation, try to have a good day. Sick to my stomach. Hoping for better things next week.
Heavy D, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man, and appreciate the feedback. And, they definitely need to dial up some deep shots, right? AP said that they had some dialed up that never got to be executed, right? A lot of that had to do with the offensive line. The other part of that, as you heard the conversation in segment number 2 with Lincoln Kennedy, is play action pass doesn't matter if you can't run. And the Raiders couldn't run worth the salt on Sunday. So if you can't run, you're not going to be able to use play action pass. It's that simple. It's an easy math problem to the point where I can do the math, right? 1 + 1 = 2. If you can't run, you're not going to be able to use play action pass. Nobody's going to care. So they've got to be able to establish the run. It is so important for this offense to move forward, that they've got to do it. Whether it's Alexander Mattison, Zamir White, whatever the case may be, someone's got to find a way to run. And obviously it's going to start up front with the big boys along the offensive line. But Heavy D, thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. And hopefully we start to see the Raiders, hopefully this week, start stretching the field a little bit and using that speed that they have in Trey Tucker and DJ Turner. Up next, got a text from Assassin's Ghost. He says, hey, Q, I think we're hitting the panic button too fast. I believe the O-line didn't help the offense, but looking at that Colton training camp and Parham with Munford is also new. I think we'll be okay. Gardner had that fumble, but he played at a 7. Also, I'm lost on why Jack Jones got ejected. I'm watching this over and over again, but I'm confused. It's from Assassin's Ghost. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And, yeah, don't want to overreact to week 1. There's still 16 more games guaranteed. Anything else that's earned after that is awesome. But there's at least 16 more of these bad boys, 17 more weeks to go before it's all said and done. The offensive line is clearly not all one unit. And as I was talking about with Lincoln, it's not going to be one unit, right? At some point, JPJ is going to be added to the mix, and he's going to have to get used to everybody. So unless they're playing at such a high level that they say, well, never mind, we don't need to put him in there, right, which is the case, that could happen as well. The offensive line was not, where it needed to be, and Colton Miller was not as good as he should have been because he did miss all training camp coming back from that shoulder surgery that he had in the offseason. So, yeah, not going to hit the panic button at all. Just didn't like, obviously, what we saw, especially when you knew that the Raiders had a really good chance to go to SoFi and pick up a week 1 victory that they just weren't able to do. As far as Jack Jones, I mean, he was, a major part of that issue that happened in the end zone. Obviously, there was a lot of players. Max was involved. Christian Wilkins was involved, right? Marcus Epps was the guy that really they were all trying to defend. So, there was some concerns there about a possible suspension, but it sounds like the league is not going to suspend anyone, just probably roll out some fines. And, so I'm glad. And look, if Jack Jones gets a fine, he gets a fine, but, he needs to be out there on the field. The Raiders are going to need him. The secondary, actually, that was a really good positive from Sunday. Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones, and Jacorian Bennett only allowed a total of 3 catches for 14 yards, 47.9 passer rating, and had 2 pass breakups. So between those 3 guys, that's good, secondary play. And so you need all those guys out there to continue that moving forward. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Mariah in Sacramento, California. She's calling with some positivity for the show. And it sounds like there's a ton of lost hope early on. And she's trying to get that back and let everyone know that the sky is not falling. Here's some positivity from Mariah in Sacramento.
Hi, Q. It's Mariah calling from Sacramento, California. I've been a longtime listener of the show. I really appreciate what you do as a longtime Raider fan. I just wanted to say one thing. Year after year, I listen to this podcast, I listen to the calls that come in, and I listen to you read the text messages. And sometimes I feel like all hope is lost and like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We're in season week 1, and already I'm getting the vibe that people are just pissed at the Raiders staff. They're pointing fingers. It's all AP's fault. It's all Minshew's fault. I think that we need to just remember one thing, and it's that we are fans, and we are here to appreciate what these men go out and do for us every single day. And rather than being ticked off and going off on the voicemail line, I just thought I'd call, show you some appreciation, just say how much I love my Raiders. I'm a fan from when they were in Oakland and even well before that. So happy to be here, happy to be listening to you every day. Love when those positive calls come in, really just praising our team for all of the great things that happen. Hope you have a good night. Bye.
Mariah, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And it's funny that you were talking about positive stuff on my radio show on Tuesday. Like, that was the theme. Monday was almost like the woosah, the get everything, get your anger off your chest type moment. And then on Tuesday, it was more of, all right, well, let's look at the positives. There were positives in the game, and it is only week 1. So there's a good opportunity for the Raiders to go get back on track. We know that this week's game is against the Ravens is going to be a tough one, but, any given Sunday, any given Monday, any given Thursday, it wasn't that were giving the Raiders a chance to go into Arrowhead and pick up a victory on Christmas last year, and they did. So, I hate to say that that's the one that stands out to me that I can always go back and reference, but for now that is. So, yeah, the Raiders have to go to Baltimore. It's going to be tough. They're 0-1. The Raiders are 0-1. Both teams need a victory, but, yeah, I like your positivity. I really do appreciate that, and, it may take some time to get things cooking, just like Lincoln Kennedy said, and you heard the conversation in segment number 2. But thanks for the support of the show. Thanks for your positivity. It's definitely appreciated. So that was Mariah in Sacramento. And we'll close out with a text from O-Side Raider G. He says, hey, Q, O-Side Raider G here. First time texting you on here. Just want to give you my perspective after witnessing the Raiders' loss on Sunday at SoFi. And I get it. We all wanted to see them win. Sunday's game felt like a typical Raider game, one where we beat ourselves. It was frustrating to see it in person, but I want to point something out. The defense held their own until the end of the game. Had Kuntz been healthy, I guarantee you that game would have ended differently. With Tyree's absence, timeline up in the air, our obvious issues remain. The lack of depth. This is the NFL. Everyone is top talent. Sooner or later, cracks will form if we have one side of the ball out there for longer than we should. Only allowed 26 rushing yards in the first half, then cracks formed and allowed 150 in the second. The next man up mentality is clear, and it showed with Snowden and J-Rob. The coaching staff has proven the culture within the locker room has changed. The details being ironed out this year are more intentional, and our staff has taken an active role in it. The signing of Chason and Kelly proved that. JPJ coming in will change that O-line. Zeus will get his rhythm going, and while he does, we have Madison we can count on. It's up to AP to recognize and overcompensate for whatever lack of creativity Getsy portrays. He's mentioned the entire coaching staff sat down and filtered out some plays to be better fit the current quarterback situation leading up to the season. I'm confident that this will happen throughout the season as we address rising concerns like inconsistent O-line play. Just iron out the kinks, stay confident, and go Raiders. There you go, O-Side Raider G. That was following a very positive call from Mariah in Sacramento, and that's some really good positivity right there. A really good perspective as well, because it wasn't going to be created in one game, right? They weren't going to lose the Super Bowl, and they weren't going to win the Super Bowl in 1 week. Is it disappointing? Absolutely. Were there mistakes made? Yep. Did the Raiders shoot themselves in the foot multiple times? Absolutely. But they're all things that are correctable, and you can clean them up. And the quarterback play has just got to be good and consistent. That's what it is, and got to take care of the ball, right? The ball security has got to be better than it was for Gardner on Sunday, even if, you know, the throw and the pass or the fumble that he had at the end of the first half, even if that was just really not him and the wide receiver on the same page, the wide receiver running the route differently than what he's expecting, and it led to that fumble, and he's not going to throw his wide receiver under the bus. He handled it like a leader and put it on him that he's got to be better. Well, as a team, they've got to be better and not turn the ball over, because they, again, can't afford to be that team that's not on schedule, that team that's not, you know, ahead of the sticks, that team that turns the ball over, shoots themselves in the foot. They're not going to be able to overcome those type of moments. But I like the text, really good stuff. Appreciate you chiming in for the first time, and hopefully it's not the last time. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Got a call from Eric in Oakland. We'll get that coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll also start doing breakdowns of the Baltimore Ravens. Matter of fact, tomorrow will be Thursday, so we got the crossover edition. So we might not get Eric's call till Friday, but we'll definitely get that call in, no doubt about it. But we'll have the crossover edition. Kevin Ostreicher, host of Locked On Ravens, he'll join the show. We'll talk about storylines. We'll talk about how the game is going to be won or lost by either team, and, you know, what we look at as you know, the strengths and weaknesses of the team as well. So we got a lot to get to coming up tomorrow on the crossover edition as we're talking week 2 action, Raiders and Ravens from Baltimore. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.